Karoline Leavitt was no stranger to the world of politics. She had spent years working behind the scenes in Washington, D.C., serving as a trusted aide during Donald Trump's presidency. Known for her quick thinking and sharp tongue, she quickly became one of the most recognizable voices among young conservatives. Her ability to articulate complex ideas in simple terms made her a favorite on cable news shows, where she often defended Republican policies with passion and precision. But despite her growing influence, Karoline knew that being in the public eye came with risks she would soon face head-on. One evening, while scrolling through social media after a long day of work, Karoline stumbled upon something that caught her attention. A clip from an interview featuring Michelle Obama, the former First Lady and wife of ex-President Barack Obama, was making waves online. In the video, Michelle appeared calm and composed, sitting across from a well-known talk show host. As they discussed various topics, including leadership styles and political legacies, Michelle made a comment about Donald Trump that stopped Karoline cold. The remark wasn't overtly harsh, it was delivered with a smile, but it carried an unmistakable sting. "Let's just say," Michelle said, pausing briefly before continuing, "some leaders seem more focused on theatrics than substance." The audience erupted into laughter, clearly understanding the subtle dig at Trump's unconventional approach to governance. It wasn't the first time someone had criticized him publicly, nor would it be the last, but this particular jab felt different to Karoline. It wasn't just another critique. It felt personal, almost dismissive, as if Michelle were implying that anyone who supported Trump lacked judgment or values. Karoline leaned back in her chair, replaying the clip several times. At first, she wondered if she was overreacting. After all, Michelle was known for her diplomatic demeanor, rarely engaging in outright attacks. Yet, there was something about the tone of her voice and the smug expression on her face that irked Karoline. Was this really how people saw conservatives? As followers of a man obsessed with spectacle rather than results? If so, then maybe it was time to set the record straight. For Karoline, this wasn't just about defending Donald Trump. It was about standing up for millions of Americans who believed in his vision. These were hardworking individuals who cared deeply about their families, communities, and country. They weren't blind supporters of theatrics. They were real people looking for change. And yet, here was Michelle Obama, a woman celebrated worldwide for her grace and intellect, seemingly mocking them without even realizing it. As the hours passed, Karoline found herself unable to shake off the frustration building inside her. She scrolled through Twitter, noticing countless posts praising Michelle's remarks as brilliant and on point. Others chimed in, agreeing that Trump's presidency had been nothing but chaos disguised as progress. While some comments were lighthearted, others carried a harsher edge, painting conservatives as ignorant or misguided. The more Karoline read, the angrier she became. This wasn't just harmless humor. It was part of a larger narrative that sought to undermine everything she stood for. By midnight, Karoline decided she couldn't stay silent any longer. Grabbing her laptop, she opened a blank document and began typing furiously. She wanted her response to be thoughtful, yet forceful, cutting through the noise without stooping to petty insults. Every word mattered because this wasn't just about her. It was about giving a voice to those who felt marginalized by such elitist attitudes. She started by addressing Michelle directly, acknowledging her accomplishments as First Lady, while challenging the underlying message of her comments. "Respectfully, Mrs. Obama," Karoline wrote, "mocking leaders doesn't solve problems. It creates division. Instead of focusing on what divides us, why not lead by example and offer constructive solutions?" From there, she expanded on her thoughts, weaving together anecdotes from her own experiences in politics with broader reflections on the importance of respectful dialogue. By the time she finished drafting her response, it was nearly 3 a.m. Exhausted, but satisfied, Karoline reviewed her words one final time before posting them online. Little did she know, this decision would set off a chain reaction that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. What started as a late-night rant fueled by frustration was about to become a defining moment in her career. A moment that would test her resilience, challenge her beliefs, and ultimately shaped the way she navigated the treacherous waters of modern politics. Would her bold move pay off, or would it backfire spectacularly? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: Karoline Leavitt was ready to fight for what she believed in, no matter the cost. The next morning, Karoline woke up with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had spent hours crafting her response to Michelle Obama's remarks, pouring her thoughts onto the page with precision and care. Now, as she opened her laptop and prepared to hit post, she couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just another tweet or casual comment. It was a deliberate statement meant to challenge one of the most admired public figures in America. Taking a deep breath, she clicked the button and watched as her words went live. Within minutes, her phone began buzzing nonstop. Notifications flooded in from Twitter, Instagram, and even text messages from friends and colleagues who had seen her post. At first, it was overwhelming. People were sharing her tweets, retweeting them, and tagging others to join the conversation. Some praised her for having the courage to speak out, while others accused her of being disrespectful or overly aggressive. The internet, as always, was a whirlwind of opinions, and Karoline found herself at the center of it all. Her initial response was sharp and direct. In a series of tweets, she dismantled Michelle Obama's comments piece by piece, using logic and wit to make her case. "Funny how someone who claims to rise above politics can't resist throwing cheap shots," she wrote in one tweet. "Maybe instead of mocking leaders, you should focus on offering solutions that unite rather than divide." Another tweet read, "Leadership isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Criticizing without context only fuels division." Each word was carefully chosen, designed not just to counter Michelle's remarks, but also to spark a broader discussion about respect in political discourse. Karoline knew that addressing such a high-profile figure came with risks, but she also believed that staying silent would be worse. To her, this wasn't just about defending Donald Trump. It was about standing up for the millions of Americans who supported him and felt dismissed by elitist attitudes. As the day wore on, the debate intensified. Cable news networks picked up the story, airing segments that dissected the exchange between Karoline and Michelle Obama. Pundits weighed in, some siding with Karoline for her boldness, while others criticized her for taking on a former First Lady. Clips of Michelle's original comments played on repeat, juxtaposed with screenshots of Karoline's fiery tweets. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like "Yo Karoline vs Michelle" and "political clapback," turning what started as a personal response into a national conversation. What made Karoline's approach particularly effective was her ability to remain composed despite the mounting pressure. While some critics accused her of being too confrontational, she never resorted to name-calling or insults. Instead, she focused on making logical arguments, pointing out perceived inconsistencies in Michelle Obama's public statements over the years. For example, she highlighted instances where Michelle had called for unity and civility, contrasting those moments with what Karoline described as condescending mockery. Her strategy paid off. Supporters rallied behind her, praising her for holding her ground against a towering figure in American culture. Many young conservatives saw her as a role model, a woman unafraid to take a stand in a world dominated by powerful voices. Messages poured in from across the country, thanking her for speaking truth to power. One fan tweeted, "Finally, someone is saying what we've all been thinking. Keep fighting, Karoline." Another wrote, "You're giving us hope that our voices matter too." But not everyone was impressed. Critics argued that Karoline's response was unnecessary and disrespectful, accusing her of trying to gain attention by picking a fight with someone as beloved as Michelle Obama. Some suggested that her tone undermined her message, claiming that her sarcasm came across as petty rather than persuasive. A few liberal commentators dismissed her entirely, labeling her as just another partisan hack looking to stir controversy. Despite the backlash, Karoline refused to back down. She leaned into the storm, appearing on multiple talk shows to defend her position. During one interview, she addressed her critics head-on, saying, I understand why people admire Michelle Obama. She's accomplished so much. But admiration shouldn't mean immunity from accountability. If we want real conversations about leadership, we need to call out hypocrisy when we see it. Her appearances only added fuel to the fire. Viewers tuned in to watch her debates, eager to hear her perspective. Whether they agreed with her or not, they couldn't deny her charisma and confidence. She spoke with clarity and conviction, never wavering under pressure. Even her opponents had to admit that she was a formidable presence on screen. Behind the scenes, however, the situation was far from glamorous. Friends and family members grew concerned about the toll the controversy might be taking on Karoline. Late-night phone calls revealed her exhaustion. "It's exhausting," she confessed to her sister during one particularly candid moment. "Every time I turn around, there's another article or segment dissecting my every word. It's like I'm under a microscope." Her sister tried to offer reassurance, reminding her of the bigger picture. "You're doing something important," she said. "People are listening to you even if they don't agree. That's worth something." Karoline nodded, knowing her sister was right, but the constant scrutiny was wearing her down. Still, she pressed on. Each appearance gave her an opportunity to refine her message and reach new audiences. She used these moments to highlight what she described as the double standards faced by conservatives in mainstream media. When liberals criticize, it's seen as brave and insightful, she explained during one interview. But when conservatives push back, we're labeled as divisive or extreme. That's not fair, and it's time we start calling it out. By the end of the week, it was clear that Karoline's response had struck a chord. The feud had sparked a larger conversation about respect, accountability, and the role of public figures in shaping political discourse. While some viewed her actions as controversial, others saw them as necessary. A reminder that democracy thrives on open dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable. For Karoline, this experience was both exhilarating and exhausting. It tested her resolve and forced her to confront the harsh realities of life in the public eye. But it also reinforced her belief in the importance of standing up for what you believe in, no matter the cost. As the dust began to settle, she realized that this clash with Michelle Obama wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was a pivotal chapter in her journey, one that would shape her path moving forward. The days following Karoline's bold response to Michelle Obama felt like a whirlwind. The internet, which had initially erupted with reactions to her tweets, now seemed to be in overdrive. News outlets couldn't get enough of the story. Cable networks dedicated entire segments to dissecting the feud between the two women, framing it as a clash of ideologies, one representing progressive values, the other embodying conservative resilience. Clips of Michelle Obama's original remarks, played on repeat, juxtaposed with screenshots of Karoline's fiery tweets and sound bites from her television appearances. It was as if the media had found its newest obsession. Karoline quickly became a fixture on morning talk shows, evening news panels, and even late-night programs. Producers scrambled to book her, knowing that her sharp wit and unapologetic demeanor made for compelling television. She appeared on everything from serious political roundtables to more lighthearted interviews where hosts tried to coax a laugh out of her. Regardless of the format, Karoline approached each appearance with the same level of focus and determination. She wasn't there to entertain, she was there to make a point. During one particularly memorable segment, a well-known anchor asked her, "Do you think you went too far? After all, Michelle Obama is widely respected, and some might say your response came off as disrespectful." Karoline leaned forward, her expression calm but firm. "Respect is earned through mutual understanding," she replied. "If we want meaningful conversations about leadership and policy, then everyone needs to be held accountable, even those we admire. I wasn't disrespectful. I was honest." Her answers resonated with many viewers, especially young conservatives who felt validated by her refusal to back down. For years, they had watched as their beliefs were dismissed or ridiculed by mainstream commentators. Now, here was someone speaking directly to their frustrations, articulating what they had long felt but struggled to express. Social media lit up with messages of support. One user tweeted, "Thank you, Karoline, for standing up when so many others stay silent." Another wrote, "You're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for all of us." But not everyone was cheering her on. Critics argued that Karoline's approach was unnecessarily confrontational, accusing her of prioritizing drama over dialogue. Some liberal pundits dismissed her outright, labeling her as attention-seeking or overly combative. A few even suggested that her response undermined her credibility, claiming that her tone alienated potential allies rather than fostering unity. These criticisms stung, but Karoline refused to let them derail her mission. Instead, she used them as fuel to sharpen her arguments further. One of the most fascinating aspects of the media frenzy was how it highlighted the growing divide in American politics. On one side were those who viewed Karoline's actions as courageous, a necessary pushback against elitism and condescension. On the other side were those who saw her as divisive, arguing that her words only deepened existing rifts. This polarization played out in real time across social media platforms, where hashtags like Trump Stand with Karoline and Michelle for Unity trended simultaneously. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds, with users passionately defending their positions. Amid the chaos, Karoline began noticing something unexpected. Her message was reaching audiences beyond her usual base. People who didn't necessarily align with her politically were intrigued by her ability to challenge authority figures without backing down. Journalists who typically avoided covering conservative voices started writing profiles on her, highlighting her rise in the political sphere and her unique approach to advocacy. Even some moderate Democrats admitted, albeit reluctantly, that her points about double standards in media coverage had merit. This newfound visibility came at a price, however. As the story dominated headlines, Karoline became a target for online trolls and critics alike. Her social media feeds filled with hateful comments, memes mocking her appearance, and personal attacks questioning her intelligence and motives. At first, she tried to ignore them, focusing instead on the positive feedback from supporters. But as the negativity grew louder, it became harder to tune out. Friends noticed the toll it was taking on her, urging her to step away from social media for a while. "You're doing great work, but this is a lot to handle," one close friend told her during a phone call. "Maybe take a break before it wears you down completely." Karoline appreciated the concern but knew that stepping back wasn't an option. Not yet, anyway. Every interview, every tweet, every comment mattered because she believed she was fighting for something bigger than herself. Still, she couldn't deny that the constant barrage of criticism was exhausting. To cope, she leaned on her support system, family, friends, and colleagues who understood the pressures of public life. Late-night conversations with her sister became a lifeline, offering moments of relief amid the chaos. "I didn't sign up for this level of scrutiny," she confessed one evening, her voice tinged with frustration. "But I also can't walk away now. If I do, it feels like I'm letting everyone down." Her sister listened patiently, reminding her of why she had entered the fray in the first place. "You're giving people hope," she said. "Hope that their voices matter, that they can stand up for what they believe in. That's powerful, Karoline. Don't lose sight of that." As the days turned into weeks, the intensity of the media coverage began to wane. News stories emerged, shifting the spotlight away from the feud. But the impact of Karoline's response lingered. Young conservatives continued to reach out, thanking her for inspiring them to speak up. Some shared stories of how her words had encouraged them to engage in difficult conversations with friends, family, or coworkers. Others expressed gratitude for simply seeing someone represent their views on such a large stage. For Karoline, these interactions served as reminders of why she had taken the risk in the first place. While the controversy had been draining, it had also opened doors she hadn't anticipated. She found herself invited to speak at events, write op-eds for major publications, and even mentor aspiring political commentators. Each opportunity reinforced her belief in the importance of standing firm, even when it meant facing criticism. Looking back, Karoline realized that the clash with Michelle Obama had changed her in ways she hadn't expected. It had tested her resilience, challenged her patience, and forced her to confront the harsh realities of being a public figure. But it had also strengthened her resolve. She emerged from the ordeal with a clearer sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of the role she wanted to play in the political landscape. Though the immediate frenzy had subsided, the ripple effects of her response continued to shape conversations about accountability, respect, and the power of words in public discourse. Whether praised or criticized, Karoline Leavitt had proven one thing unequivocally: she was a force to be reckoned with, a woman unafraid to challenge the status quo and fight for what she believed in, no matter the cost. As the dust began to settle from the whirlwind of media attention and public debate, Karoline Leavitt found herself in a quieter but equally challenging phase. The initial frenzy had subsided, leaving behind a mix of triumphs and scars that would shape her in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. While the world moved on to new headlines, Karoline was left grappling with the personal toll of what had just unfolded, a toll that went far deeper than the surface-level criticisms or accolades. Late one evening, after another long day of interviews and meetings, Karoline sat alone at her kitchen table staring at her phone screen. Notifications still trickled in, though they were fewer now. Her inbox was filled with messages from supporters praising her courage, but also from strangers hurling insults that cut deep. Some called her names, questioned her intelligence, or mocked her appearance. Others made snide remarks about her career, suggesting she was only relevant because of controversy. She scrolled through them absent-mindedly, feeling a strange mix of numbness and exhaustion. It wasn't just the online trolls that weighed on her. It was the sheer relentlessness of it all. For weeks, she had been living under a microscope, every word dissected, every action scrutinized. Even when she wasn't actively engaging with the backlash, it lingered in the back of her mind like an unshakable shadow. Friends had warned her this might happen if she took such a bold stance against someone as revered as Michelle Obama, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of it. That night, she picked up the phone and dialed her sister, who had become her confidant throughout the ordeal. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," Karoline admitted, her voice heavy with fatigue. "It's not just the criticism. It's everything. The constant pressure to say the right thing, to represent everyone who believes in me, to prove I'm not what they say I am. It's exhausting." Her sister listened quietly before responding. "Karoline, you've always been strong. But being strong doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself. You're allowed to take a step back when you need to." The words hit home. Karoline realized that while she had spent so much time fighting for others, defending their beliefs, amplifying their voices, she had neglected her own well-being. She thought about the late nights spent crafting responses, the endless scrolling through social media feeds, the hours spent rehearsing talking points for interviews. All of it had taken a toll, both mentally and physically. She knew she couldn't sustain this pace forever. But even as she acknowledged the strain, she couldn't ignore the moments of genuine connection that had come out of the chaos. Every day, she received messages from young conservatives who thanked her for standing up when no one else would. Many shared stories of feeling dismissed or belittled for their views, saying that her willingness to challenge powerful figures gave them hope. One message stood out in particular. "You're showing us that we don't have to stay silent anymore. Thank you for being brave enough to speak our truth." These interactions reminded Karoline why she had stepped into the fray in the first place. They fueled her determination to keep going, even when it felt like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Still, she began to wonder if there was a way to balance her advocacy with self-care, to continue making an impact without burning herself out in the process. Over the next few days, Karoline made a conscious effort to slow down. She turned off notifications on her phone during certain hours, allowing herself breaks from the constant barrage of opinions. She reconnected with old hobbies she'd set aside, like painting and journaling, finding solace in activities that let her escape the noise. And perhaps most importantly, she leaned harder on her support system, spending more time with family and close friends who reminded her of who she was outside of politics. During one particularly reflective afternoon, Karoline decided to write down her thoughts. Sitting at her desk with a blank notebook, she began jotting down everything she had learned over the past few weeks. She wrote about the importance of resilience, noting how she had discovered inner strength she didn't know she possessed. She reflected on the value of vulnerability, realizing that it was okay to admit when things got hard, and she acknowledged the power of community, recognizing how much she relied on the people around her to keep moving forward. As she flipped through the pages later, she noticed something surprising. Despite the challenges, she had grown in ways she hadn't expected. The experience had forced her to confront her fears, push past her limits, and redefine what success meant to her. It wasn't just about winning arguments or gaining followers. It was about staying true to her values, while inspiring others to do the same. One evening, Karoline attended a small gathering of friends and colleagues. The conversation eventually turned to the recent events, with several people asking how she was holding up. Instead of brushing off their concerns, she opened up honestly. "It's been tough," she admitted. "There are days when I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world. But then I think about the messages I get from people who say I've inspired them to speak up, and it reminds me why I started this journey in the first place." Her honesty struck a chord with those around her. One friend nodded and said, "You're not just representing your beliefs, you're showing people that it's possible to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's scary. That matters more than anything." Those words stayed with Karoline long after the party ended. They reminded her that while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, the impact she was making extended far beyond the controversies or headlines. She was planting seeds of courage and conviction in others, encouraging them to find their voices and use them. In the weeks that followed, Karoline began to approach her work with renewed focus. She continued appearing on television and writing op-eds, but she did so with a clearer sense of purpose. Rather than reacting to every criticism or provocation, she chose her battles carefully, prioritizing issues that truly mattered to her and her audience. She also started speaking more openly about the challenges of being a woman in politics, using her platform to highlight the unique pressures faced by female commentators and leaders. Through it all, Karoline remained steadfast in her belief that accountability and respect were essential components of healthy political discourse. She refused to shy away from calling out hypocrisy when she saw it, but she also worked to foster constructive conversations rather than divisive ones. Her evolution as a commentator became evident to those who followed her closely. She was still bold and unapologetic, but there was a newfound maturity in the way she navigated sensitive topics. By the time the controversy faded completely from public memory, Karoline had emerged stronger and wiser. The experience had tested her in ways she never imagined, pushing her to confront her vulnerabilities while reinforcing her commitment to her principles. Though the scars of the ordeal remained, they served as reminders of the resilience she had discovered within herself and of the countless lives she had touched along the way. For Karoline Leavitt, this chapter wasn't just about clapping back or defending her beliefs. It was about growth, perseverance, and the enduring power of standing up for what you believe in, even when the world seems determined to knock you down. Weeks had passed since the height of the controversy, and life began to settle into a new rhythm for Karoline Leavitt. The media frenzy that once dominated headlines had given way to newer stories, as it always does in the fast-paced world of politics. Yet the echoes of her clash with Michelle Obama lingered, not just in public discourse but within Karoline herself. It was a moment that had reshaped her career, tested her character, and left an indelible mark on how she viewed her role in the political arena. One crisp morning, sitting at her desk with a steaming cup of coffee, Karoline reflected on everything that had transpired. She scrolled through old tweets, watched clips of her interviews, and revisited some of the messages she'd received during those chaotic weeks. There were moments when she cringed at her own words, wondering if she could have phrased something differently or handled a particular question with more finesse. But there were also moments of pride, times when she saw the impact her voice had made even in the smallest ways. It wasn't long before she decided to put pen to paper, or rather fingers to keyboard, and write about her experience. Not as a defense or rebuttal, but as a reflection. She titled the piece "Standing Strong: Lessons from a Political Firestorm," and published it on a prominent conservative website. In the essay, she opened up about the highs and lows of the past, few weeks sharing both her struggles and her triumphs. Looking back, she wrote, I realized this experience taught me far more than I expected. It reminded me of the importance of resilience, the value of staying true to your beliefs, and the power of using your platform to amplify voices that often go unheard. She acknowledged the criticism she faced, admitting that not all of it was unwarranted. There were times when I let my emotions get the better of me, and I'm sure I alienated some people along the way. But I've come to understand that growth comes from discomfort, and sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most. The essay struck a chord with readers. Conservatives praised her honesty, while moderates appreciated her willingness to admit fault. Even some critics softened their stance, acknowledging that her reflections showed maturity and depth. One reader commented, whether you agree with her or not, Karoline's ability to reflect on her actions is admirable. That's rare in today's polarized climate. Karoline's newfound perspective didn't mean she planned to shy away from controversy. On the contrary, she felt more determined than ever to continue challenging the status quo, but with a refined approach. She began focusing less on reactive responses and more on proactive advocacy. Instead of waiting for someone else to set the narrative, she took charge of her own messaging, addressing issues like free speech, accountability, and the importance of respectful dialogue across party lines. Her evolution became evident in her public appearances. During one televised panel discussion, she fielded a question about whether she regretted responding so forcefully to Michelle Obama. Without hesitation, she replied, "Regret implies wishing you hadn't done something, and I don't feel that way. What I said needed to be said because too many people feel dismissed or belittled for their beliefs. But would I handle it differently now? Absolutely. Experience has a way of teaching us patience and perspective." Her answer earned nods of approval from even her harshest critics. For the first time, many saw her not just as a fiery commentator, but as someone willing to learn and grow. This shift in perception opened doors she hadn't anticipated. Invitations poured in for speaking engagements at universities, think tanks, and community organizations. Students, in particular, gravitated toward her story, eager to hear how she navigated such a high-stakes situation while staying grounded. At one university event, a young woman approached Karoline after her speech. "I want to thank you," the student said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been afraid to share my views because I know they're unpopular on campus. Hearing you talk about standing firm even when it's hard gives me hope that I can do the same." Karoline smiled warmly, remembering the countless messages she'd received from others in similar situations. "You don't have to be fearless to speak up," she told the student. "You just have to care enough to try. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it." Moments like these reinforced why she had chosen this path in the first place. While the personal toll of the controversy had been significant, the connections she forged with people who felt unseen or unheard made it worthwhile. She realized that her role wasn't just to defend policies or ideologies, it was to inspire others to find their voices and use them boldly, even when it felt uncomfortable. As months went by, Karoline noticed subtle changes in how she was perceived. Once labeled as overly aggressive or confrontational, she was now seen as a thoughtful yet unapologetic advocate for her beliefs. Critics still challenged her, of course, but their arguments carried less venom and more substance. Allies rallied around her, recognizing her as a leader capable of bridging divides without compromising her principles. Behind the scenes, Karoline worked tirelessly to maintain balance in her life. She carved out time for self-care, prioritizing activities that brought her joy and peace. Whether it was painting, hiking, or spending quiet evenings with loved ones, she learned to recharge in ways that kept her grounded. Her family noticed the difference, remarking on how much lighter she seemed compared to the height of the controversy. "I think you found your stride," her sister said during one of their regular phone calls. "You're still fierce, but there's a calmness to you now that wasn't there before." Karoline laughed softly. "Maybe I've finally figured out that being strong doesn't mean carrying everything on my own. It's okay to lean on people, to ask for help when I need it." Her journey culminated in an unexpected opportunity, an invitation to speak at a national leadership conference. Standing on stage in front of thousands of attendees, Karoline delivered a speech that blended humor, humility, and wisdom. Leadership isn't about perfection, she said. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. It's about listening to those who disagree with you and finding common ground where none seems to exist. And above all, it's about remembering that every action you take has the potential to inspire someone else to take theirs. The audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. As Karoline stepped off the stage, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a realization that her voice mattered, not just for its volume, but for its authenticity. In the end, the clash with Michelle Obama wasn't just a fleeting moment in Karoline's career. It was a turning point that shaped her into the person she was destined to become. It taught her resilience, empathy, and the importance of leading with integrity. Most importantly, it reminded her that standing up for what you believe in isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And so, as Karoline moved forward, she carried with her the lessons of the past, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For her, the fight wasn't over. It was just beginning.